I'm very pleased that we will be able to discuss a little bit the issue of technology, of social media, in general, in political usage in our region. I think this is a really relevant issue, which is not so much research. So it's really great that we have today with us people who will say a few words, introductory words into this topic. We will continue with our colleagues and friends from Faculty of Political Sciences in Sarajevo with Emir Vajzovic. Then Sanja Bojanic, who is Executive Director of Center for Advanced Studies Southeast Europe. As I already announced, that is our main partner institution in the region. So welcome again to Belgrade. And finally, last but not the least, my colleague from the Department of Sociology, Faculty of Philosophy, Jelisaveta Petrovic, who will address us in the end of this session. Please, Emir, you are on.
Thank you. As introduced, I'm coming from Faculty of Political Science, University of Sarajevo, and I was discussing this with a colleague over breakfast. My academic background is very diverse, as the topic which I'm presenting here. Media and information literacy as a common goal of Western Balkans for promotion of democracy is a very complex, multidisciplinary topic, which I will try to elaborate on a few aspects. I will go through some 4 elements of my brief presentation, discussing role of citizens in democracy, just to kind of, whenever I have a very complex issue ahead of me, I always like to take a step back and kind of look to the basics. What are we discussing? Because usually, at least for myself, I tend to lose myself in very complex research, elaboration, thoughts, and I'm not sure if the direction is good where I'm heading, so I like to take a step back to kind of assess the basics. So then I will go through a concept of civic literacy, concept which is not completely new, but still undeveloped, and something I'm developing for some time now. We'll go through media and information literacy as common goal in Western Balkans, and for the end I will just throw some ideas in current and future challenges for democracy in Western Balkans in the respect of the topic that I will be discussing. I will use this opportunity to praise the organizers for just geniusly setting up all the panels and speakers, so I had a good follow-up on previous sessions to continue with my presentation. This presentation is the result of a few articles, researches, and a current project I'm leading for Bosnia and Herzegovina and Faculty of Political Science, which is called Building Trust in Media in Southeast Europe and Turkey. It's a regional project under UNESCO and EU leadership. To start with, what is the role of citizens in democracy? Well, basically democracy doesn't work without its citizens and their active participation. We all know this. In Lincoln's view of democracy as government of the people, by the people, for the people, as you can notice in repetition, the people are the key ingredient. Well, for that ingredient to be well used in a gourmet recipe called democracy, mixed with all other ingredients such as rule of law, human rights, minority rights, strong state and civil society institutions, and so on, the well-informed and educated citizen is the cornerstone, is the main ingredient. For 21st century democracy, we need 24th century literate citizens. This concept which I mentioned that I'm developing of civil literacy includes in a lot of other elements, and to explain, we'll try to elaborate a bit more on the background. Well, democracy is, as we say, the worst form of government except for all the others. We have a lot of challenges over the time, especially in these days. Now democracy is facing contemporary adjustments between new communications rules and tools, primarily based on internet protocol, and on the other side, the citizens, by and large, not sufficiently empowered for their expected active citizenship role in democracy. One of the challenges is the fact that formal and non-formal education is not keeping the pace with fast development of social relations, information communication technologies, new media, as well as the new political, economic and security trends, along with other challenges in modern democratic societies. Resulting fact is in citizens who are overnewsed and underinformed, with inadequate civic education and evidence that they are not performing expected watchdog function over democratic process and key power stakeholders. Media are power, that's definitely sure, of and for democracy, as system which assumes that citizens are well informed with the media and political literacy and educated, at least to some extent. Only then an empowered citizen may make free and critically thought through decisions, among others, on elections of best democratic representatives. Also informed and educated how to use other democratic correction mechanisms. Support to any democratic system is unquestionably the strong civil society, self-organized citizens, independent media, and among others, what we do here, constructive academia. The concept of civic literacy, which is definitely something that I'm advocating, it needs to be future strategically developed, understands competencies and results of educational system and lifelong learning with efforts of all individuals to exercise its knowledge by actively participating in democratic process, including the following elements of civic literacy. Obviously, we start first with general literacy, which include reading, writing, but bon ton and moral competencies as well. Second will be constitutional and legal literacy, where one should be aware of democratic institution, processes, legal rights and obligations. Thirdly, political literacy, to understand government operations, main social issues and critical political thinking. After that, we have information literacy, which can be identified as ability to identify, locate, assess, and efficient use of information, closely related to media literacy as ability to analyze, assess, and create messages. These days, in order to have all of the above, you need to have strong digital literacy skills, which include knowledge and behavior, which includes effective use of digital devices for communication, expression, cooperation, and advocacy. After that, economic and financial literacy, because often in these political discussions we are just undermining the importance of money. After all, Bosnia and Herzegovina especially, we are very good in passing the laws without budgetary support for laws, actions, strategies, policies, and so on. Also, this set of skills and knowledge is necessary for decision making pertaining to private and public funds. we have to be aware that one of the reasons for lack of active citizen participation is over-adept citizens which don't have alternatives, which includes lack of freedom. They have to be within their own world of trying to come up with the ways of earning more money, dealing with the credit loans and stuff like that, and unaware of public spending, which is key for corruption, public policies, and ways to track promises of elected politicians. And last but not least, security literacy, which is awareness and assessment of security risks, both public and private, digital and physical, online and offline. I'm mentioning this because what we have heard before, most of nationalistic rhetorics are invoking security issues as a pretext, fear of the other, threat of the neighboring country, known enemy, and so on. But also lack of awareness of online threats and securities. Having in mind that the state and dynamics of democratic development in Western Balkans, priority development of media and information literacy awareness and strategic approach is of paramount importance. Media and information literacy is basic for enhancing access to information and knowledge, freedom of expression, and quality education. It describes skills, attitudes that are needed to value the function of media and other information providers, including those on internet in societies, and to find, evaluate, produce information and media content. In other words, it covers the competencies that are vital for people to be effectively engaged in all aspects of development. Media information literacy, understood by UNESCO as a composite concept, encompasses knowledge, skills, and attitudes to enable citizens. It's a list. There is no definite and only exclusive definition of media information literacy, but UNESCO defines 10 aspects that they are finding the most important, that are understanding the role and functions of media and other information providers in democratic society, understanding the conditions under which those functions can be fulfilled, recognize and articulate a need for information, locate and access relevant information, critically evaluate information and the content, extract and organize information and media context, synthesize, ethically and responsibly communicate one's understanding and create knowledge to an audience or readership in appropriate form and medium, be able to apply information communication technology skills, engage with media and other information providers, including those on internet, for self-expression, freedom of expression, and intercultural dialogue and democratic participation. Why I'm saying all this is that media literacy, media and information literacy is probably the next task for communication sector regulators, which are probably going in following revisions of audiovisual and multimedia services directive. The question is how to make sure that all citizens are enabled to access and use media in a critical way through adequate digital skills. As we speak, European platform of regulatory authorities are in session discussing exactly this issue. After entering into force the NIS directive and GDPR regulation, national legislation, those are directives on security of network information systems and general data protection regulation. You have been probably receiving a lot of emails regarding these two EU regulation. Some of the information and cybersecurity is primarily issue of human factor. The same is with media and information literacy. with probably the same general security issue. Only difference is that media and information literacy, when it fails in society, it's more an indirect consequence than cybersecurity failure. Human factor needs time to understand, learn, and raise acceptable level of media information literacy to apply in daily dealings with media and information that are acquired. As I said, we are just over-newsed and under-informed, which is one of the basic problems. To conclude, I would say that democracy is in new type of crisis over media shifting paradigm. We are all seeing all the challenges with Trump, with the Twitter account, clickbaits, fake and alternative news, circumventing mainstream media with social networks, news platforms without professional oversight mechanism. And all this is breaking democracy and destroying fundamentals in informed and educated citizen making the educated and informed decisions. It is the worldwide problem with more and more elections being tempered with through online media propaganda methodology, fake websites from Montenegro, Russia, Macedonia, bot and trolls. The alternative truth over social media paired with Cambridge Analytica type of scandal of abusing personal data. We have stretched seriously the center of democracy, the people, the educated and informed citizens. This poor guy, the center of democracy, does not stand a chance against multi-billion-dollar industries, state-sponsored cyber and social network engineering attacks. With a few quotes, starting with Christy Matheson, saying, with the big data, there's not as much of interest in you as individual. What's interesting is you as member of group at patterns that we can see in your behavior and interference that we can make. Democracy and freedom are questioned when control of user data and commodification of communication supervised by big technology companies present a form of digital feudalism based on extraction of free digital work. Western Balkan countries are generally unprepared for new challenges that democracy is facing, since we have not even understood correctly the previous challenges that were active. Level of media information literacy closely related to nationalism, populism, radicalization, tampering with holy mechanism of democracy, the democratic elections. As our Professor Mujkic pointed some 8 years ago on a conference, that in Bosnia and Herzegovina, for example, we have never had free democratic elections since they were always conducted under sentiment of fear, which is homogenizing electorate around nationalist parties. With the rise of internet penetration, new media and social networks, this battle is between fear and free will of citizens. Democratic society is even more challenged. The solution is in developing strong media information literacy strategies on state level, reform educational system almost completely to prepare new generations for active citizens, and create adequate regulatory framework tackling all challenges while protecting democratic values. Finally, to repeat, only informed and educated citizen can be constructively active citizen. So far, it is visible that mainly destructive citizens are more active, while others are more silent. So, thank you.
That is good overview of the topic. Let's go to Sanja now.
Thank you, Gazela, and thank you for entitling this session, Technology and Politics Behind the Curtain, because what I'm interested in is precisely this behind the curtain. And I'll start with a kind of a quote of the French President Macron, who said that he's determined to make France a nation that thinks and moves as a startup. Let's have it on this startup part of digital communication and technology innovation. And I'm not going to tackle the idea of a nation, of building nation, instead of global thinking of developing startups 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. So at this very moment we are talking here, and in France you have Viva Tech, a huge and very expensive fair of new technologies with the CEOs from Microsoft, IBM, Uber, all these guys, together with Mark Zuckerberg as well, who just yesterday or day before spoke before the European Parliament, and let's say 3 weeks ago did the same thing in front of the American Congress, defending, or more precisely excusing Facebook and defending Facebook politics for being auto-regulated, or let us say frankly for lacking regulation in data protection. So this is what we have also in front of the European Parliament, and if you're subscribed to newsletters these days, you're just receiving tons of mails like making you confirm the data privacy disclaimers and asking you to confirm your identity. Or will to accept receiving newsletters, and also accepting giving away or spreading your data as well, personal data. So this is one point. The other point I wanted to stress is that why I'm interested into this behind the curtain scene, because what we are having here in Western Balkans, in the region, or what we had in Africa or Asia 3 years ago, 4 years ago, even before American elections, well, we had Cambridge Analytica involved pretty much into their elections. And I don't know, I think here through a form of a thought experiment, but I don't know what is happening behind the curtain here in this area. Who is doing and what is doing about the data market? Let us call it data market. So briefly, for last 30 years, from Web 1.0 until now developing Web 4.0 or even 5.0 with the emotional web, not only web of objects, but emotional web that is developing, and that we will hear about in 10 years, not at the moment, but in 10 years. But things are developing now. So that's the paradox we are living. So what I wanted to stress is that bias between the technology and technological innovation and development and political. What are we doing when we think about political, and are we behind, pretty much behind the scene, or very slowly developing this discourse on the cleavage between the technology and political? What are we doing at that point? The other thing I wanted to stress is that despite this huge campaign against Zuckerberg and his rather loose privacy politics and data protection. The paradox is that just after his hearing at the Congress, or probably now, Facebook and social networking raised, let's say, 13 to 15%. So what is it about? What kind of a convenience or our leisure or accepting, sharing data is happening instead of protecting ourselves? So there has been a study in Stanford. An economist made a study with a very simple task, and she said, let us send emails to student population and ask them if they'll share with us 3 of their email contacts, and in return they'll get a free pizza. And you cannot even believe it, people gave their contacts and got pizzas, free pizzas instead. So what is it that? That's the priority. So the priority is really to get the free pizza and not to protect data, neither our data or others, our friends' data. So the hashtag delete Facebook didn't work, and pizza just won. That's what I wanted to say for the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. You can use this one.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I will just continue from your presentation. I would like to say that here, I think we are still in the phase of this technological or data optimism, and that civil society actors and citizens are still in the phase of discovering the benefits of using digital technology, and that this dark side with data protection and other negative aspects is still not in the full focus. And I would like to present briefly present results of 2 researches that were conducted last year and this year with 2 different kind of actors. One is the research conducted during the protest against dictatorship that was in last May. And then the other is the research with the initiative We Won't Let Belgrade Drown. What is common for these 2 researches is it is about citizen activism and the role of digital technology within it. So in this research we started with the conceptual framework developed by Lance Bennett and Alexander Segerberg about connective action, and actually these 2 protests can be considered as examples of connective action. First, the protest against dictatorship. Actually, it was the protest against the results of the presidential elections in Serbia. Were started actually from one Facebook invitation from one rather anonymous person. And that was really interesting because even that person was surprised when he saw, and everyone that gathered around in front of the National Assembly when they saw each other. So actually the Facebook was the initial, Facebook event was the initial thing for this protest. And then all the organization, information sharing, connection was done through the social media, and Facebook actually was the main social media involved. And this protest was specific because it didn't have any kind of formal organization at least officially. So the Facebook infrastructure served as a place to connect people, to share information, to discuss what will be done in the future. And the results of this research show that 86% of people who were participating in the protest were actually informing themselves about the protest through Facebook and some other social media, but Facebook was the number one. Also, 50% of them participated in the closed or semi or open Facebook groups discussing what will be done next during this protest. Unfortunately, this protest did not survive this initial 3-4 weeks and did not make many changes, but it was interesting because it was organization without organization, at least visible organization, and the social media infrastructure served as a mechanism of organization. The other example of the usage of social media and digital technologies is the initiative We Won't Let Belgrade Drown against the Belgrade waterfront project, and now it has other issues as well involved. They have organization in the more formal sense, but the thing is that they use all the available digital technologies they have. So they have 2 websites, 3 Twitter accounts, 1 Instagram account, Facebook as the most important infrastructure, emails, Viber chat groups, newsletters, mailing lists, so you name it, they have it and they use it. But they say that Facebook is the number one. And during the elections this year, they had a problem because of the Facebook experiment with this news feed. And they actually had to change their posts and try to figure out what is the algorithm behind this news feed, how they will be presented first on the pages of people they're interested of targeting. Also, they have a problem with the fake website, which was actually designed to mislead their followers with all the information. It seems like it is their website, but it wasn't. And actually, it has Facebook pixels, so people who visited that website were actually followed and targeted with negative campaign against this initiative. So they targeted the supporters of the initiative with a negative campaign. And as explained by the members of the initiative, that was the Russian scenario. So someone here from the behind the scenes figured out this. They are well aware of all the negative aspects. They are. Their supporters maybe not as much, but they are aware of the fake news, of algorithmic bubbles. It's hard to go through this bubble and to reach a wider audience, digital noise, competition within digital space. So they're fighting all of these issues. But the thing is that they depend on a Facebook as an infrastructure is the biggest problem. And so if we have a look on these 2 examples, we see that Facebook, actually the infrastructure of the Facebook platform is the main place of organizing alternative movements and activism in Serbia. And I forget to mention in the beginning that it's very important. It is in the context of mass media blockade and censorship. So digital media are the place where some alternative voices can be heard. And then we have all this Facebook, which is, of course, dominated, organized, planned, and designed by Facebook company. So actually, the activism, the digitally mediated activism, is happening in the narrow space between state regulation and state control, and then on the other side, the regulation of this Facebook company and other tech companies. So it's a quite narrow space with all the now they're managing. They have a developed craft to manage to go through all these barriers, but still having these 2 actors actually narrowing down the protest space. It's quite problematic for the civil society and citizen activism in Balkans, but not only here. That's the case in other regions as well. So that was the brief presentation.
Thank you, Elisaveta. I think that we had very good overview, starting from Emir and very let's say, comprehensive overview of what is happening, what is possible, what is needed to happen in order to have participating citizens, which we are all seeking for, and to brief presentation on what are concrete examples and what are the concrete issues in digital world. I have Philip raising hand, and then we will continue.
First of all, thanks for the interesting presentations. I have one question, and each of you could answer. I have a question from the perspective of political scientists, because at the beginning, when the social medias showed up, so to say, there was this there was this enthusiasm among the political scientists. And they thought that this is gonna be a game changer in many authoritarian systems and in many dictatorships, because they thought this now we're gonna have a massive impact on those societies. It will be much harder to sustain an authoritarian system. And then Arab Spring came, and they all thought those are the empirical evidences that now social medias are a game changer in a positive manner. Then a few years afterwards, we have this dark side of the social medias, because they are really they are responsible for the rise of the radical right in the West, because now we don't have there are no gatekeepers anymore, like the normal media, so to say. Everybody can post whatever she or he wants, and it's much easier to organize, and it's much easier to so to say to go viral and to present those ideas that usually wouldn't be published in any media. So my question is, what do you think? Because now we have these two completely different narratives, so to say. In the beginning it was extremely positive, now it's extremely negative. So what do you think? Can we find a middle ground, or? Thank you.
Shall we connect two more and then give you floor to answer? Yes, Sad, then Irena.
My question is similar to what Philip asked. Sanja spoke about social media, between spontaneity and this background control, and Elisaveta about social media as tool for civil activity and so. But my question is actually, do the different social media serve as a mechanism of demobilization of civil society? I mean, all of the activism is actually exhausted in online sphere, and it tends in online sphere without even being able to actually transfer this sort of activism to this offline space, to the real space.
And Irena, and then I will give you floor to answer.
Okay, my question is, I was motivated by Emir Majzovic, but it's for everybody actually. You started your presentation saying like this well-known thesis about voters, they're incompetent, ill-informed, forming consistent opinions, rationally ignorant, etc., and finally incapable to meaningfully contribute to political life, which is a well-known thesis of Philip Converse from 1964, and then elaborated many times after that. And we all know that, but how can we? I'm actually not sure how we are challenging this status with the new technologies and new media that we are discussing today. Actually, one thing that bothers me, and this is also related to Elisaveta presentation, is inclusion. One of the most important democratic criteria, which is inclusion of all. How can we include all? How inclusive is this digital public sphere. And then more substantive, which we probably don't know the answer, but what are the strategies actually of this digital public sphere that are aiming to avoid to replicate the same model of the traditional public sphere that is actually producing these incapable citizens that are actually not able to participate fully in democratic life. I'm still not sure that we are not replicating the same model and that we are seeing the same results. I'm wondering how can we avoid this and what can be the strategies that can help us to avoid this.
Thank you. Sanya was first raising hands, and then
I'm maybe impatient to answer from my point of view. I'd like to recall you what happened when Mark Zuckerberg was a Harvard student and why he was not expelled from the school. Well, he merchandised data he collected to the principal. So that was the beginning. That's the initial point where the Facebook and when the Facebook started. So about intentions and good intentions, if you start like this, even because of your emotional problems or whatsoever, I doubt when you come to the market and when you start your startup on that grounds. That's the thing about the good intentions. And on the second part of the virtuality of the social networking, and as said, demobilization as such, that was discussed from the very beginning of the 3W. So in 1990s, you had that perfect and romantic attitude of World Wide Web, developing creativity, connecting people, having great opportunities, and then you had the influence of the interactivity. It was not enough just reaching people, but you need to interconnect and ask them to react to your activities. Then has been developed social networks and already peer-to-peer, already algorithms that reached specific targets and constrained what was at the beginning as a kind of a IP open and very creative. So, and then with the Web 4, you get Web of Objects, like smartphones doing things instead of you, replacing you, making you a user and a passive user. So you're not going to develop your intelligence, but through artificial intelligence, you're going to serve other purposes. So that's a short history of what the digital gave us. And concerning the political in all this, so that's the first cleavage. What is political in that digital era when everything can be manipulated, and especially this data? When you are manipulating, like Kogan did, especially those psychological and affective and emotional threats of people. I'm not into dystopia at all. I'm pretty much involved in new technologies, and I'm not skeptic in a sense of refusing, or in a ludistic terms, refusing the usage of the digital technologies. But speaking of literacy, digital literacy, I don't know that we can use strategies that we used before. So we really need to invent something, and I'm pretty nostalgic when speaking about Web 1, because Web 1 was the first invention. And then came the money, capital, and then the capital started channeling what was the creative part of the human at the beginning. So that's the point. How we are going to invent and again be human, whatever we use, and even in artificial intelligence or whatsoever, if the artificial intelligence will help us to become more human, then my answer is yes. Thank you.
Okay. Spain first. Okay.
I would like to just say maybe to be some positive changes as well as a response to all the negative aspects that Sanja mentioned. One is the play with algorithms and the response from the civic sphere. Like maybe one of the examples is Confuse Facebook, actually, because machine learning and this artificial intelligence is based on the analysis of big data, and if data is wrong, then the analysis is wrong, and then all the market implications are wrong. So there are responses, and the civic sphere or alternative movements are quick to respond to these challenges. So there is, okay, I believe that Facebook is still, or other companies alike are of course stronger, but there are some responses. So this Confuse, or how to actually confuse machine, and how you can try this with Confuse Netflix, and then we will have some romantic comedies instead of movies that you like, because, or Amazon or other applications that are actually using user data to have improved marketing. That's one thing, and I believe that we will have some responses. But to the negative side, I think the social sciences are very slow to respond to all the challenges. For instance, I went through the book of Philip Kotler, who is one of the gurus of marketing, and the newest book on marketing has a full chapter full chapter about big data, and how big data could be used in different marketing purposes. And this is a handbook, so it is something that is now one of the chapters in this very famous handbook, famous for the marketeers, while social sciences are very slow in this process. And I analyzed 47 top social sciences journals, and only 79 articles from the period of 2000 to 2017. The 2000 I took because it is the beginning of the big data as a word. Only 79 articles are dealing with big data, and only 20 are actually using big data analysis. So it is like 0.2% of all the articles published in the last 17 years in the top tier scientific journals. So yeah, social sciences are slow adopters, I would say, and we should deal more with all these challenges of digital technology. And regarding this gap and the different access to social media and different levels of digital literacy, that's a huge problem. And in Serbia, for instance, its penetration of internet is around 70%, which is, it sounds high, but actually is not. If you want to conduct, for instance, because there is some regulations about participation in some European projects, and you need to have around 80% of participation, of penetration, to be eligible for some kind of research. And within this 70%, those are mostly young people from urban areas. So, and basically, if you look at that and then you compare with the data about the participants in these movements against the dictatorship, or we want let Belgrade drown, that's the same population, and it's rather limited. So yes, that's another huge problem. And the others are actually those who give their data freely, who are like, there is this famous, I don't have anything to hide, so I will change my data for pizza or for some book you can download when you give your email address, etc., etc. So that's the huge problem. I agree with Irene. Thanks.
Thank you for questions and discussion. In the beginning, I was really trying to keep with projected timeline. So I decided, because this is so huge topic, that I will lose myself and I'll be kind of lost in all the excitement about this topic. So I was more focused to follow the bullet points that I kind of make for myself. Even that took too long. With two questions that you posed, you tackled pretty much most of it. I will start to kind of put my answer in more coherent response. To start with the Philip's question, well, with great power comes great responsibility, and definitely internet protocol and all the services that we're developing on it is a great power. The problem, the shift of paradigm from excitement and positive things about social media and ability to kind of overcome the censorship and circumvent mainstream media is kind of shifting when great powers were under attack. Until it was ways to take down repressive regimes in Arab Spring and all other things, it was good, kind of, look, people are using social media, so they're kind of circumventing the state sponsorship over state media, and it's all good. And when it came to last presidential elections in the United States, then everybody was kind of more not so happy about this potential of social media to kind of change mainstream political doctrine of political parties, individuals, mainstream media, almost old methodology on how to win elections. Now you have completely new players, you have just something that nobody expected to happen. As we have discussed previously, individually, suddenly you have kind of took by surprise the huge mainstream media in the United States by just one Twitter account. And everybody was unprepared how to deal with this. Plus all the other possibilities of fake news portals, publishing alternative facts, fake news and all that stuff. The normal reaction of professional journalism is to do fact-checking, go into the several sources and so on. By the time they checked one fake news, there's 10 more aired and published. When they do another fake news, such as the Pope has supported Trump for the president, they come with 100 new sources. The result is just that current system of information of citizens is not relying anymore on the gatekeepers such as the great corporations, professional media, and God forbid, regulatory communications authorities. The gatekeepers are the citizens. That was my key point of presentation, that media information literacy is a key to raise the new age of gatekeepers ourselves as active citizens in new democratic society. There's no more some higher authority that will keep us safe from immoral acts, from disinformation, from foreign country influence. There's no Secretariat of Information and Moral that used to be in some countries. We are the gatekeepers of new age. And the problem is that our system is not preparing us for this role. We are completely unprepared for this. They gave us these killing devices and nobody explained us how to use them. I was giving a keynote lecture in a conference on civic education. We have one and only subject in primary and secondary schools, democracy and human rights and civic education. And NGO, American NGO Civitas is kind of running the curriculum. And I was lecturing on their annual conference. And I was trying to ask them, well, look, there are two pictures in the slide. iPhone Generation 7 and Glock hand pistol Generation 4, which is the more deadly one and more dangerous one. And they were all kind of confused. What the hell is this guy talking about? Like, why is he putting in the same slide iPhone and Glock pistol? Well, the data shows that the gun is killing only that number of people, and this device is endangering new generations of teenagers to the point that they are not even aware of it. The digital footprint, their whole digital history by the time they turn 18 is already done, that they cannot fix it anymore. This all is coming into this big data story about who's going to use all this and how. As to the things of citizens, how is this changing the whole active citizenship story we had from before, is that now we are over-newsed and under-informed, as others were also writing and saying before me. With previously, the main problem was how to access the information. You had these difficulties in Gutenberg Galaxy, how to get to book. How to get a book. After that, with the development of radio frequency spectrum, telecommunications, radio and TV were developing, satellite, cable TV. So the access to information was easier, but still at the point you had like 2 or 3 TV stations, 5 to 10 radios. Then internet came and it opens completely new world. Now we don't have problem of accessing the information. We have the other problem of how to understand, how to find the information in the just vast sea of everything that is available there. How to critically think and how create a proper content in this new environment. We are also, as they are calling it, prosumers. We are producers and consumers of the information at the same time. Facebook is the largest media without its production. They are using 2 billion of journalists, which are all around this table and others. We have to come again to the beginning. Democratic society today is facing challenges that nobody is trying to find, let's say, prevention. They are all focusing on how to deal with peripheral issues. What I was discussing here, that problem could be solved with the new approach of civic literacy, which include all those complex elements of today, and especially in terms of what we are discussing here in this panel of media and information literacy, which needs to go from basically preschool. Today, children, mainly by the age of, before entering teenage age, they have access to smart devices. They're already connected. And to go back to the story on the beginning, it will be the same thing as you give them like Glock pistol when they are going to children garden. Here, honey, take Glock, have fun. And this is something we have to kind of rethink from the beginning. Thank you.
No.
Okay. Just to Jelisaveta, this is not my area of expertise at all, but last year we had this professor from University of Houston, Dr. Ryan Kennedy. He came to visit us at the Faculty of Political Science, and he was actually presenting the methodology of big data analysis within social sciences and political sciences. And it was really, they are developing that there are few scientists actually in the United States. They developed that together with the University of Harvard. And but he told us they were again mobilized to do electoral campaign, presidential electoral campaign. They did it for Hillary Clinton actually, and they lost. So maybe we can put you in contact with him.
Thank
because
you.
we stayed in touch, so it will be interesting.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Well, I have very short comments. I'm not expert in the field, but I was moved by the presentations, and obviously it is the key word here is education. How to educate people in that know-how to deal with digital technologies, and whether we need reform or revolution in education system. That's another question, but that's as usually the key issue. And what comes to my mind is the quotation from the picture of Dorian Gray, when Lord Henry says, if man is gentleman, he knows perfectly enough, and if he is not, everything he knows is bad for him. So if you have that know-how, then digital technology works for you, and that's enough. And if you do not have that know-how, then everything you know turns to be bad for you. And what also comes with this digital technology era is, of course, the huge amount of information. And in the previous time, the problem with democracy was the lack of information, and now it is this huge amount of information. But maybe the side effect of that is that actually nothing really matters anymore. So even when you have this fact check and when you demystify some fake news, it just doesn't matter. So I mean, it's maybe a major effect or side effect of this huge amount of production of information, but I would say that it is a major problem, that really nothing matters anymore. You can, take for instance WikiLeaks. It would, under normal conditions, I would say it would cause the fall of governments all over the world. Basically, nothing happened. Nevertheless, we know so many things that we couldn't even imagine that could happen. But again, it doesn't matter. So we live in some sort of so what era. You can have all the possible information. So what? That's the attitude. So I would say that, from my perspective, it's the major problem with this huge amount of information.
Well, actually, I wanted to follow up on what you just said, because it's also, I believe, it not only about that we need to learn, that we need to be educated on new technologies, we need a new kind of education. Also, the problem is the ideological context in which all this is happening. I don't know if you remember this German movie, The Life of Others, that won the Oscar for Best Foreign Movie a couple of years ago. So it was about Stasi spying on German citizens, Eastern German citizens, and it was, if you remember, after the fall of Iron Curtain, it was the whole world was enraged on how Eastern communist regimes spied on their own citizens, especially in Stasi. That was the topic of the movies. Could you believe that? They spied on people. They had real people spying. Everyone was enraged. And then Edward Snowden came and revealed the PRISM project. That's enormous. That Stasi was a little baby compared to PRISM, and nobody was enraged. Maybe it's because of the intermediary nature of this spying. It's not real people who spy on you. It's not like you have a man, that wiretaped your apartment and then he listens to your quarrels with your wife. It's a technology and you think it's impersonal. That's some kind of information going somewhere in basement, somewhere in the States. But actually, it is outrageous, and nobody is outraged. And like Srdjan said, no government will suffer for that. Like PRISM, so what?
We can say in Germany, because I like your example, but if you also use the example of tapping the phone of Angela Merkel, and nobody will be ready.
No? Great comment. Why is such a huge difference between Stasi and NSA? Well, these are NSA thank you devices, and we are doing this willingly. Nobody forced me to bring 2 of these with me, or any of you. This is our educated decision to be part of huge surveillance system. It comes as our consent for the convenience we get in return, to have instant access to information, to be able to research something instantly. Post pictures of cats, and well, unfortunately also people are posting pictures of their children and their home and everything else. I was joking that because of the social media, probably syndicate of intelligence community should be in strike because they are losing their jobs. There's no more need for extensive intelligence community to be hired because we are all just giving our information. This is where I live, this is how my apartment looks like, this is what I eat, and we are all just doing this willingly because it's convenient. And we have this all, well, social, psychological, whatever issues we have with posting old stuff. This is completely new area of research. But this is the huge difference between Stasi and NSA, is that we are willingly giving all our, even all our addition to the big data by clicking all those little yes I agree stuff and installing applications in Facebook and in our devices and whatever. So again, I'm going back to this civic literacy issue. This is media and information issue, but this is also a security issue. A neighbor of mine was robbed 3 times conveniently when he was posting pictures from vacation. Here I am with my wife and everybody is out, nobody's at home. People come and they kind of help him with stuff they have in the house, which he also took pictures of. So it's something that we are not really aware of, all the negative stuff. Obviously, I would, again, as I'm still giving my consent, this compromise of, well, I'm aware that big corporations are earning a lot of money on my behavior online, on my digital footprint, and I'm okay with this. I made my peace with this. I want to have devices, I will need to be connected, this is what I do, this is my tools of the trade, so I'm not able to go analog now, because in turns I would need to go to the library, open a book, ask a librarian to do like footwork research, not do search in the database, because also will lead leave digital footprint of what I'm researching. So we'll have to go by foot to the library and look at the books, where it is, how it goes, and stuff like that. It's not possible today anymore. But then again, you have to be aware of what you are giving away. This is why GDPR legislation and this directive of European Union is so big, so huge, and will lead to a lot of changes. Plus, what I'm suggesting that will be in communications regulatory authorities paradigm to go over media and information literacy, kind of regulatory support, and this is probably a new step that's going to happen. So, just my observation.
Okay, I have just one brief question. As far as I followed the discussion here, a lot of emphasis was made on the personal responsibility and personal virtue of us as epistemic agents. So the idea is the state, the educational system should educate us, should enable us, should develop capabilities for people to assess news in a prudent way, not to give away personal information, to be informed about the risks and so on and so on, and I definitely agree with this. Nonetheless, there seems to be some kind of disanalogy between, a smartphone and a Glock pistol. The use of smartphone is not regulated by the state. The use of the guns usually, unless you're in some other states, usually is regulated. So the question is, what should the state do about this apart from educating citizens? Or whether it should do anything at all or not. We know that newspapers, major media and so on can be punished and actually are punished for distributing fake news and other things. We haven't seen that on Facebook. We know that in 1 day or 24 hours, maybe even more in some countries before the elections, there is this electoral silence. You can't publish propaganda and political information. Nonetheless, there is no such thing, as far as I know, for Facebook and social networks. So the idea is, what would be the mechanisms that the state can use to stop the spread of the false news apart from education?
I might just add, lest we forget that even Barack Obama was elected through these bottom-up strategies, and Alexander Nix, the CEO of the Cambridge Analytica, said that actually those elections in 2014 also has been analyzed and pushed by Cambridge Analytica. So it's not only right and spectrum that is using these techniques. We have them everywhere. And going back to what you said, it's extraordinary. That's something that is not only on the side of technologies or digital technologies that should be built. It's the institutions themselves, apart from any activity, science or education, that should be strengthened. So what are we doing to overcome this Margaret Thatcher's parole of there is no society, there is only an individual? So what is it that we are doing to build up the society again, despite technologies, despite all that we have also on our disposal to do so? Thank you.
And concerning these bottom-up strategies, I would just add that maybe the strategy reduce, confuse may be useful, reduce in terms of information you're giving about yourself for purposes of personal protection, then confuse, because it's not the data we give, it's the patterns we give that are actually interesting for the market analysis. So the other one would be confused. So purposely Google something that you would never Google and try to exit your bubble, because all of these are actually keeping us in our bubbles, and it is hard, even though there is so much information around, we are like in some kind of bubbles and don't see anything beyond. So
Constraining choices rather than spreading.
of course, yes.
Well, for the end, I would like just to say something. I was involved as young person back then. I was involved in youth policy sector in Council of Europe. Unlike European Union, which has this digital agenda, and I just scrolled fast through it, and there is like promoting digital literacy skills and inclusion, but it's always in European Union, it's always in the service of employment and employment skills. It's always in service basically of capital. Council of Europe has a little bit different approach, but the problem with Council of Europe is that it's impowerful, completely powerless. They are actually trying to push the things which are something which we would call enable critical thinking of young people. And that is maybe the core which we need to do through education. But the problem with that issue, and I was thinking while you were discussing why don't we have why somehow we always talk about digital in terms of a civil society, never in terms of a state, in this way at least. Because state, in a way, is not interested to promote critical thinking among their citizens. And that's the issue, which is really difficult, because Council of Europe is pushing that through its youth agenda, and there are some countries which are very strong in youth work, and they can do that with young people in quite a wide number, I would say. But many of them, including the Western Balkans, definitely have very impoverished, very weak tools in youth work, and they cannot approach young people and educate them. So I think that there is a point that this needs to be done through education from kindergarten, but the problem is that we cannot push that to be built in education in a way which could be serving citizens and not serving the capital, and I think that's the main issue here with the digital agenda of the European Union or any other country. And with that, I would conclude this session and invite